What a world, what a world. This is Caleb Jones. And this is the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast, freedom-focused lifestyle design for men. It's story time. I'm going to tell you a story. And this was a story that was told to me by one of my mentors, a man named Dan Kennedy. I'm going to Calebize the story a little bit. I'm going to modify it slightly, but it teaches the same core lesson. I want you to imagine that you are on a cargo plane and you are flying across the Pacific Ocean, middle of nowhere, out in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific Ocean. You know, it's neat. I didn't realize this till I was an older child, until I learned this in school. The Pacific Ocean actually covers half of the planet. And if you look at a globe, if it's an accurate globe, you can turn it so all you see is ocean. Pacific Ocean is fucking huge. And so I want you to visualize that you're in a cargo plane, sitting in the cargo bay in the back, chilling out, reading a book or fucking with your laptop, whatever. And all of a sudden you hear some chatter from the cockpit and some problems, and there's some kind of sudden engine failure, and you start to go down. And if you have seen the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks, you have an idea of how this goes. It's scary. The plane crashes. And you do what George Carlin calls the water landing. You make a water landing, which means you crash into the fucking ocean. And the pilots die. Everyone on the plane dies except you. Just you. And you're sitting there floating on a piece of flotsam in the middle of the goddamn Pacific Ocean. Now, here's the good news. The good news is that you were the navigator. You were like the cartographer for the trip. That's your natural skill. And you were studying the maps and the GPS just before the plane went down. So luckily, you know exactly where you are. You know exactly where you are in the ocean. And there are two islands that are maybe within swimming distance, but they're two very different islands. So the first island, that's only about a mile away, maybe 2 miles. You could swim 2 miles. You could pull it off. Mile and a half away or so. And that is a small island inhabited by the Fata tribe. And the Fata tribe is an interesting tribe. It's an indigenous tribe. And it is only women. It is a matriarchal society. So there's only women on this island. And the Fata tribe is unique in that they are all overweight and over the age of 40. So they're all older, fat women. The Fata tribe. And you're saying, okay, I could swim to that island, but there's another island. That island is 20 miles away. Could you make 20 miles? I don't know. So you're weak, you're scared. You're not at your best. You just fucking crashed in a fucking airplane. And could you swim 20 miles? I don't know. But here on that island is a different tribe, which is the Hata tribe. The Hata tribe is nothing but women. It's a matriarchal society. Just like the Fata tribe. There's nothing but women. There's no men on the island. And the Hata tribe, all the women are under the age of 25. They're between the ages of 18 and 25. They're all young and they're all hot. They're smoking hot, beautiful bodies, perfect trim bodies, perfect tits, hips, ass, long hair. They spend their days bathing in perfume, and there's no men on the island, so they're horny as fuck. And you start thinking, man, holy fuck. I could swim to the Hata island, and not only would I be rescued, I'd be getting laid left and right. Oh, dude. So you have a decision to make. Which island do you swim to? Now, there are younger men and there are older men, and I'm about to generalize. As a matter of fact, I'm about to generalize wildly, but this is generally true. Generalities are usually generally true. Not always, but usually. They're not 100% true. There are lots of exceptions to every rule whenever you talk about human beings, and I always have to say that because every time I say anything like monogamy doesn't work, or if you have kids in your 20s, you'll ruin your chances of being successful later in life, and blah, blah. There's always invariably one or two people in the comments say, well, wait a minute, I know a guy. Yes, I know you know a guy. The exception proves the rule. You just proved my point. So, yes, there are always exceptions, but I'm going to generalize here, and I understand there are exceptions. But generally speaking, what a young man would do in that scenario is he would say, all right, Well, fuck the fata tribe. I'm not even going there. That's bullshit. I'm going to go for the hata tribe. I'm going to swim that 20 fucking miles. Fuck yes. And he swims out there, and he swims and he swims and he swims, and then he gets eaten by sharks and he dies. Or there are no sharks, and he swims and swims and swims. He gets tired. He can't sustain it anymore. He can't even tread water, and he sinks and he dies. It's just too far away. What does the older man do? Well, older men are a little different than younger men. Older men have been around the block, and older men do not need to achieve and accomplish and kick ass quite like the younger man. They don't have the ego that a lot of younger men do. And if you are an older man, if you're over the age of 40, certainly over the age of 45, you can relate to this. When you were younger, you wanted to like fight and make things hard and struggle and battle for your success. And when you're an older guy, you just want success. You don't want to work too hard. You just want to sit on your ass and have success come to you. So here's what an older man would do in that scenario. The older man would leisurely swim the mile and a half to the fata tribe. Once there, he would flirt with the fat girls, the old fat older ladies, get them to build him a boat, and then at his leisure, sail to the hata tribe and then get laid. That's the difference between, in general, younger men and older men. Older men and men with those kinds of personalities just want the result. Younger men want to struggle and fight, and or in many cases, and I apologize if you are a younger man, but younger men are more impulsive. Younger men are often less intelligent. Younger men often don't think this shit through. Younger men certainly, especially younger men in their 20s, I've said this many times, have much less emotional control. I talked at length about how I have noticed when I see a raging, angry guy on the internet on a comment on my blogs or my websites or someone else's websites, I can almost always tell this is a guy in his 20s. If someone says something in a blog post or a forum post or a comment that person is like, the guy just loses his mind and flies off the handle. Almost always, this is a guy in his 20s. And I relate to that because when I was in my 20s, I was like that. We didn't have the internet quite when I was in my 20s. A little bit. The internet was coming on when I was in my 20s. It was the 90s. But prior to the internet, we had inter-office email. We had intranet email in the big companies that I worked with back then. And when I was an employee, before I started my business, before I went full time in my early 20s, and I would get so angry. Someone would say something, I get so mad, and I would fire off a bunch of really angry fucking emails because I was so fucking pissed off about something someone said. And I would get so fucking pissed. And I remember how mad I used to get when I was in my 20s. Then I get my 30s and 40s, and you mellow out. You're chill. You're not as outcome dependent anymore. You don't really give a fuck. It's harder to make you angry when you're older because you don't give a shit. Someone says something you don't like, okay, whatever. You're a dumbass. Okay, cool. Instead of losing your cool like a guy in his 20s. I have also talked about how men in their early 20s, men specifically under the age of 23, if a guy is under the age of 23, I refuse to give them relationship advice. And the reason for that is I know from long experience that whenever a guy under the age of 23, really under the age of 24, asks me for relationship advice, he has massive one-itis, and I'll give him the advice, and he'll nod his head and say, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then he won't do it because he has raging one-itis. He can't help himself. So after a few years of spinning my wheels and butting my head against the wall, trying to help guys in their early 20s fix their relationship problems, I just drew a line at 24 and say, you know what? If a guy's going to ask me about relationship advice, I'm not going to help him unless he's paying me. And that's an exception to the rule, obviously. But other than that, no, because he won't do it. He just won't fucking do it. Young guys don't have a lot of emotional control. I mean, normal human beings of any age, normal men of any age struggle with emotional control, but certainly it's tough for men in their early 20s. So it's a very different mindset when you're a young man versus when you're an older man. When you're an older man, you have much more emotional control and you just want the results. You don't want the effort. You don't want the battle. You just want the results. Now, there's another phraseology I have for this, and some of you who know my content well know where I'm going with this. I talk about two different types of men when it comes to dating and relationships, the woman's side of your life. These two types are thrill of the hunt men and pleasure of sex men. And let me describe them. They are very, very different. Matter of fact, in some ways, they're opposites. Now I'll start with the thrill of the hunt man first. The thrill of the hunt man, when he goes out, when he sarges for chicks, picks up women, what have you, he likes the process of pickup. He likes the process of dating. If it's day game, if it's online dating, if he's on a first or second date, it doesn't matter what the context is. He likes that process. And he gets off on that process. He enjoys that process. And the harder that process is, the more exciting it is for him, and the more sexual it is for him, and the more ego gratifying it is for him when he finally has sex with that woman. So this is the guy who will fight ASD and LMR. Sorry, I'm using pickup artist terms. ASD is anti-slut defense. That's when a woman wants to have sex with you, but doesn't because she feels it's not right. You might judge her, and you might think she's a slut, blah, 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 blah. LMR is last-minute resistance. That's when you're having sex with a woman the first time, and clothes are coming off, but she gets reluctant at the last minute. And these are the thrill of the hunt men are these guys who will fight ASD and LMR for sometimes hours, sometimes all night. They'll persist and persist and persist and persist. And finally they'll have sex. And oh, they feel so good. And the next morning they will brag to the world about how hard they had to work and what a badass they were because it was so difficult. They want the process of achievement to be, at least with women anyway, we're not talking about business so much, but with women, they want the process of getting to sex difficult. That's what's enjoyable for them. Now, I'm going to say this up front really quick. Thrill of the hunt or pleasure of sex, there is no right way to do this, and there is no wrong way or bad way. They're just different. One is not better than the other. Everyone has his personality or not. Pleasure of sex or thrill of the hunt. So with that being said, let's talk about the other category, pleasure of sex men. These are men who are pretty much the opposite of what I just said. The pleasure of sex man just wants the sex. He doesn't want the process to be difficult. Matter of fact, if the process is difficult, he's kind of turned off. And he's like, God damn, that's too much work. I don't want to do that. I just want to have sex. I don't care how hard it is. Matter of fact, I don't want it to be hard. I want it to be easy. So the pleasure of sex man, his ideal first date or date where there is sex or first meet or whatever you want to call it would be, he talks to the girl for a few minutes and then she rips off his clothes and jumps on his dick and has sex with him. And he's like, hell yeah, awesome. Now, the thrill of the hunt guy would hate that. He would hate that. He'd be like, well, this isn't real sex. This isn't real game. This doesn't count, quote unquote. That's the difference in the viewpoint of these two men. It's a difference in worldview. It's a difference in personality style. The pleasure of sex man wants these things to be easy. The thrill of the hunt man wants these things to be hard. And you'll see these very interesting arguments appear between these two types of guys. When I was deep in the pickup artist world, I owned a pickup artist forum for many years. There were many arguments between a lot of pickup artist guys, and they didn't realize that they were coming from one of these two camps. Some guys were pleasure of sex guys, and some guys were thrill of the hunt guys. So a common argument would be a pleasure of sex guy would be really into online dating because it's easier. And the thrill of the hunt guy would be making fun of the online dating guy, saying, well, that's not real game. That's bullshit. Matter of fact, the last time I was in a pickup artist forum, which is a while ago now, maybe 2 years since I even looked at one, but it was about 2 years ago and I was lurking through one. I saw a guy getting an argument, and the thrill of the hunt guy was saying, online dating isn't real game. It's not game. You online dating guys don't have game. And an online dating guy said, how can you possibly say that? I've had sex with 23 women in the last year. So how could you possibly say I don't have game? And I met them all with Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, etc. And the thrill of the hunt guy responded, that's not game. Yes, you had sex, but that's not game. Game is you approach, according to this person, game is you approach a woman in real life and you use real life game to get her phone number and then fuck close her and then have sex with her without the aid of an online dating app. Then that's game that counts. Hardcore thrill of the hunt guys actually think that if you've gotten laid through online dating, that lay doesn't count, quote unquote, because it was easy. I remember many years ago reading a book written by Neil Strauss, Style, from a bazillion years ago in the golden age of PUA, back in the mid 2000s. And he was writing about his experiences. He was, not anymore, he was a hardcore thrill of the hunt night game guy. And he was. Now, he isn't today. This is many years ago. But back then, that's what he was. And he tried online dating. And I'm not kidding. This is literally what he said in the book. The book, if you're curious, is the book he wrote called Rules of the Game. He immediately had sex with 5 women and then got off the dating sites because, and I quote, it was too easy. Right. That's a thrill of the hunt guy. He was actually turned off by having sex with a bunch of hot girls when it was easy. Whereas a guy like me, I'm a hardcore. pleasure of sex guy. I want it to be easy. I read that and said, holy shit, online games sounds like the greatest thing in the world. That's the difference. Now, to be clear, I am not saying that Thrill of the Hunt men don't like sex. I've had a few guys when I talk about this get very upset. Thrill of the Hunt guys get very upset saying, how dare you say I don't like sex? I fucking love sex. I'm not saying that Thrill of the Hunt guys don't like sex. They love sex. Some of them like sex even more than pleasure of sex men. The point is that sex is not their only objective. Overcoming an obstacle that is difficult is their objective. And I'm not saying that pleasure of sex men don't like sexual variety and aren't attracted to new and different women. They certainly are. The need for sexual variety is different than whether or not you are a hardcore pleasure of sex man or a Thrill of the Hunt man. There is a difference between those two things. Again, one wants it to be hard, the process of dating and pickup, and one wants it to be easy. Very similar to, in some ways, the analogy I just gave about the older guy who wants it to be real easy and the younger guy who just wants to go boom and go get it, even if it's hard, even if he dies. And that may not be a perfect analogy, but that's the analogy I've got. Now, let me give you a business example of what I'm talking about here. One of my mentors from afar, I have never met him, I've never spoken with him, but I've read a lot of his books, is a man named Robert Ringer. Matter of fact, Robert Ringer is probably my favorite all-time nonfiction writer. And his big book, he wrote way back in the 70s, is called Winning Through Intimidation. It is one of those classic success books that I think is recommended reading for most men. And he actually did an updated version about 10, 15 years ago during the 2000s. I have not read it, but I've heard it's not very good. I don't suggest that version. That's probably the one you get by default on Amazon. If you want to get a hold of that book, try to get a hold of the one that he originally published sometime around the 70s, mid 70s or so. That's the one you want to read. It's amazing. And basically what he talks about is his journey from making, let's see, what was his income? Something like $28,000 a year, getting that from $28,000 a year to $800,000 a year in 1 year. In 1968 dollars. He did this in the late 60s. Holy shit. And what he did, there's a lot of concepts he talks about in that book, but his core concept is, or at least one of his core concepts was that when you go into business, you are told by other people, other successful business owners, particularly other successful business owners in that industry, that in order to be successful in this business, kid, you got to bust your ass. You got to put in the time. You got to put your nose to the grindstone. You got to work and work and work and work. You got to work for 10, 20, 30 years. And then someday, if you've busted your ass long enough and hard enough, like us, we, the gray-haired elders in the industry, then and then only can you be successful in this business. And he was saying that's horseshit. That is completely false societal programming. That's bullcrap. You can actually anoint yourself as successful immediately. And you can immediately reach high levels of success without busting your ass for 5, 10, 15, 20, 27, 35 years. Because that is false. He didn't say this, but that was my interpretation. False societal programming. That's bullshit, he says. If you want to be successful, you can be successful next year. You don't have to put in all this time and effort and work. And again, in the business world, there are the equivalents of Thrill of the Hunt men and pleasure of sex men. There are men who just want the fucking money. I just want the fucking money. I just want it. I don't want to work hard. I just want the money. Now, I'm willing to work. That's a key distinction between the pleasure of sex business guy versus the wantrepreneur, the guy that sits around and reads on the internet all day and doesn't actually take any action. The pleasure of sex, quote unquote, guy in business actually puts in the action. But he's not putting in the action to overcome an obstacle and to be a better man and to build a wonderful business. No, he's in there for the fucking money. He doesn't want to work very hard. He just wants the results. And he wants those results as quickly and as easily as possible. And there are people in the business world who are kind of Thrill of the Hunt type guys. This would be like Gary Vaynerchuk type guys. These are guys who want it to be hard. They want to work 15 hours a day. They want to bust their ass 7 days a week for decades on end. They want to grind and grind and grind and grind because, God damn it, that's where they get their validation. That's what they like. That's where their ego comes from. And they love that stuff. They love working. They love grinding. Yes, they also want the millions of dollars. Yes, they also want the financial success. Yes, they also want the social accolades. They want all that stuff too, but that's not their only objective. Their other objective is to look back on their life and say, look at all this hard work I've put in over the last 15 years of my life. And here I stand on the hill and I've accomplished this because it was difficult. Again, one is not better than the other, although through that original story and maybe through this podcast, my bias is seeping through. I clearly have a bias because I am clearly one of these types of men. I'm the guy who just wants the results. I don't want to work hard. I do work hard and I like working hard, but I don't work hard because I'm fucking bored. I don't work hard because I want to be a better businessman. I don't work hard because I need to accomplish some kind of obstacle or prove something to my dad. I want to work hard because I like money. I've said this to people. I like money. Every once in a while, I will get guys on my websites who are saying, you're just trying to make money off people. And I said, fuck yeah. That is exactly why I'm here. I am a capitalist running a business here. It is, and I've said this literally to people. It is my job to vacuum out as much money from your wallet and stick it into my wallet. That's why I'm here. I'm completely honest and congruent about that because I just want the money. Now, I want the money long-term, which means I have to build long-term quality relationships with a lot of people. I can't just sell garbage. I can't be a scam artist because a scam artist makes money for a brief period of time and then he's gone forever, or at least in another industry, because scam artists can't make long-term income streams. They get found out and people find out and then they stop buying their shit or they return their stuff. They have return rates of 30, 40% instead of 1% like what I've got. So I have to do the correct things in order to make that money, but I have no interest in busting my ass just to bust my ass. That goes for both my woman life and that goes for my business life. My ideal first date would be, and I'm not kidding here, I would meet a woman at a Starbucks. I would talk to her for about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I'd get a good look at her. Then I would immediately go to my place and have sex with her. And then when we're done having sex, this is within 5-10 minutes. I'm not kidding. Immediately have sex. And then when we're done having sex, then I would talk to her for a little bit. I wouldn't kick her out because I don't do one-night stands. I do long-term non-monogamous relationships. So I certainly want to get to know her, but I want to have sex first. I want it to be and I want her to be begging for it. I don't want to have to work hard for the sex. Again, I am the opposite of the thrill of the hunt, a pleasure of sex guy. I just want the sex. Same thing with my money. One of the many reasons I went from 0 to a 6-figure income by age 27. I remember talking to the college recruiters who would come over to my house when I was in high school. My parents were terrified that I didn't want to go to college. And so they would try to convince me. So these college recruiters from like DeVry and various other schools like that would come over to my house and try to convince me about how going to college was such a great idea. Oh, Caleb, you put your nose to the grindstone, you put your nose to the grindstone, kid. In 25 years, you could be making $80,000 a year. Wouldn't that be great? And I'm like, I want to make $100,000 a year. I want to do it in the next few years. And they would just kind of, blink their eyes. They say, well, you climb the corporate ladder and you bust your ass 35 years. And by the time you're 57, maybe you could make that kind of money. Yeah, go to hell. Fuck you. I made that kind of money by the time I was 27 because I just want the money. I don't want to work hard. Now, what if you are a thrill of the hunt guy? Let's end with that because I get a lot of emails from guys, a lot of questions for guys who say, hey man, I'm a thrill of the hunt guy. That's who I am. I like to hunt. I always am sarging. I always want new women. I'm always at the bars and clubs looking for new women. Even if I have 1 or 2 or 3 amazing women in my life, I still want to be on the hunt for new women. How do I build the Alpha 2.0 lifestyle? How do I settle down? How do I have a girlfriend? How do I have MLTRs? God forbid if I want to settle down and have kids, how the fuck do I do that? Well, here's the answer. It's not an easy answer, but here's the answer. You make it right. You integrate that into your lifestyle. So when you get down with a high-end MLTR or OLTR or OLTR wife, part of the deal you'll have to tell her is, look, I'm a thrill of the hunt guy. And instead of having 1 or 2 or 3 constant FBs or long-term FBs like Caleb does it, instead I'm going to have maybe 1 FB and I'm going to be constantly going out to bars and clubs or constantly on Tinder and Bumble looking for new girls because that's what I like. And you just make it work. And you devote time per week to do that. You devote time in your life to do that because when you stop doing that, when a thrill of the hunt man stops hunting, he starts getting pissed off. He starts getting uncomfortable. He starts getting antsy. He starts fucking up his life. So acknowledge who you are and what kind of man you are and do that. Now, obviously, if you're a pleasure of sex man like me, you need to do virtually the opposite. You need to get really, really good at building long-term relationships, which is what I'm really good at, because I don't want to go out and find new women all the time. I hate that. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. I'd rather just have several hot girls in my life who are long-term and consistent, so I don't have to do that. Matter of fact, that's where I am now. I really don't have to do online dating anymore. I mean, I do rarely for various reasons outside the scope of this podcast, but I don't need to. I'm good to go. And that's exactly what I've wanted my whole life. So you need to get to that point. If you're a pleasure of sex guy, if you just want the sex, you need to develop several women. 2 is okay. 3 or 4 is much better, plus a decent sized roster, as I talk about in my books, so that these women can sustain you for a long period of time. So you don't have to go back to Tinder and Bumble every once in a while. So you don't have to go out to bars and clubs, because you won't like that. You'd rather have sex and focus on your business or do other things, right? That's what you are. It's a pleasure of sex man. Same thing with business. Same thing with all the other aspects of your life. Identify the type of man you are and make sure you do the right things based on who you are. Know thyself and don't lie to yourself. Don't do that. Don't be like women. Women do that a lot. They lie to themselves. But a lot of men do this too. Be honest about who you are and live a life congruent to the man that you are. This is one of the many reasons why I think adopting the cheating lifestyle is such a terrible idea. You're living a completely incongruent lifestyle. Fucking do whatever you want. Have an open relationship or do MLTRs or something else. Don't cheat the rest of your life. You're going to fucking hate that. Boy, I covered a lot in this podcast. Damn, dude. But that's the deal. I hope this has helped clarify a few things for you in terms of your own personality. And I will see you very soon. Bye.